and burn.
Hey everybody. So today I am going to be discussing, oh Jesus, I have no idea when this movie came out. I think it's around 2011 or 2012, and that is Eduardo Sanchez's absolutely killer Lovely Molly. Basically, this tells the story of Molly, of course, and her husband Tim, as well as her sister Hannah, and it's mostly focused around Molly's self-destruction once her and her husband Tim have moved back into her childhood home, where her and her sister were endlessly abused by her father. And I can't remember which one of them, I think it might have been her sister Hannah, was the one that eventually kills their father. And then they, of course, are left to deal with the trauma for the rest of their lives that their father inflicted on them. Now, that raises my first question here is, why would you move back into your childhood home where all of this happened? It is an incredibly nice house. The place is massive, and it's out in the middle of nowhere, so you've got a lot of property there. And so, if you were anybody else, this place would be incredibly attractive. But I just don't understand why Molly would ever opt to move back into this house, considering what she went through in there as a kid. And then, not to mention the fact that she is also a recovering drug addict. And if I'm not mistaken, her drug of choice is heroin, I think. At one point, you see a twisted spoon and a needle on the table, and I'm assuming that's heroin. But yeah, so her moving in, being a recovering drug addict, attempting to get clean, or she is clean, sorry, and she's attempting to stay clean. I just don't think that this is the house to do it in. So anyways, it's not before long, before long, the house starts to affect Molly. Molly becomes more and more undone. She has a camcorder, which is also really fun because Eduardo Sanchez was half of the team. Him and Daniel Myrick, were responsible for giving us the Blair Witch Project back in '99, which kicked off the whole found footage horror movie thing. And he has not forgotten his found footage roots. Molly has a camcorder, and as she falls apart more and more, she uses the camcorder more and more, and you sort of, like, Molly without the camcorder, it's almost like that part of Molly is attempting to maintain some sense of normality, but Molly with the camcorder, she's gone. And her father may or may not have been in league with Satan to some degree, specifically the demon known as Ouroboros. He controls X number of legions in hell, and if I'm not mistaken, the interesting thing with Sanchez choosing Ouroboros, if I'm not mistaken, Ouroboros is one of the more understanding demons from the Christian faith. Or maybe I shouldn't use the word understanding. He's one of the more tolerant demons from the Christian faith. So it's almost like Sanchez just needed to pick a demon, and he picked Ouroboros because Ouroboros is part human, part horse. He has the head of a horse and the body-ish of a human. And he is pretty intimidating looking. So that is most likely his primary reason. But picking Ouroboros was a little sketchy because, again, like I said, he's not exactly the most lethal out of all of the demons that you could have chosen. But nevertheless, yeah, the father was being controlled by Ouroboros, or the father welcomed Ouroboros into his life. I'm not exactly sure how Ouroboros got hooked up with their father, but that is one of the bigger reasons, one of the primary reasons why the abuse took place. And then Molly starts to see her dad around the house, and at one point, when she's at work, she works at this little mini mall, like an indoor strip mall, and she is part of the janitorial crew. And at one point, she's walking around the back somewhere, and you can see her on the security camera. She ends up, somebody ends up having sex with her down there, except of course there's no one there. You can see her pull her pants down, and she kind of just gets rammed up against the wall. And you know that that's supposed to be her father. She even at one point says, she's like, Tim, Dad's here, he's here. And her husband's like, there's nobody in the room. And she's like, show yourself, and all this shit to her dad. And then she starts calling him a coward because he refuses to show himself to her husband, Tim. And I don't know, I think the dad was probably in the house. I don't think this movie takes place in Molly's mind. I think this movie it's more honestly satanic. Like, there is a satanic influence by way of Ouroboros. There's no way you can deny that. And I mean, at one point, Molly ends up seducing her pastor at her church, and she bites him to death. Like, she bites him hundreds of times. You see his body naked in the bathtub, and he's been bitten like 100+ times. And that is, of course, causes a massive amount of blood loss, and he dies as the result of this. And Molly has a thing for biting people, because then, just as everything continues to escalate and everything starts to fall apart more and more, she starts making out with Tim, and she bites into his bottom lip, and it is a severe bite. Like, I don't understand how Tim, I mean, had he not died by the end of the movie, I don't understand how Tim would ever be expected to be able to enunciate correctly. Like, she practically severs his bottom lip completely. And she's got a dead deer in the basement that she's stabbing with this screwdriver. And she discovers, when she's like camcorder Molly, she goes out to this little sort of shack, little, I guess, I don't exactly know what to call this place. It's attached to their property. I guess it's some sort of maintenance shed that they have there where they would keep things like tools in order to work in the yard and the lawnmower and whatever else. And she goes straight to the floorboards. She lifts it up and pushes the camcorder down there. And you see this little plaque that somebody made commemorating Ouroboros. And, I mean, how would she know that that thing was there if something wasn't sort of guiding her hand, right? That's where things get a little strange again, because there's no way you can deny that there's a heavy satanic influence going on in this household. But at the same time, it's never explicitly explained. How Ouroboros is communicating these things to her, he just is. Like, she knows that plaque is just under the floorboards, and that sort of thing happens quite a bit. And all the while, her sister Hannah is attempting to keep her straight. You know, Hannah accidentally lets her smoke some weed, and this sort of triggers Molly's addiction issues again. And Hannah's attempting to right that wrong, and nothing's going to work out here. And then you find out that Tim the whole time is having an affair with the chick that lives down the road from her. And this prompts camcorder Molly to kill her kid. And then she records the firefighters digging her, I think it's her son, digging her son's body up from a distance, because camcorder Molly is essentially Ouroboros Molly again. So yeah, this movie is absolutely terrifying. I also love too, at the time, I don't think the website's up anymore, but when you went to the website for Lovely Molly, there was all of this extra video footage and sort of like the faux documentaries, a lot like that Sanchez and Myrick had done with the Blair Witch Project, with the documentary like The Curse of the Blair Witch, which was of course a mockumentary, further generating the the idea that the Blair Witch was real, which back in 1999 we all completely bought into because it was being sold as a traditional and honest documentary. So I liked that aspect too, and it added to the whole mystery and mythos of Ouroboros. The website really dove into everything. It dove into the history of the property and how the property where the house was built was kind of cursed. And I thought that was really fun too. And yeah, this movie's amazing. It concludes with Molly walking into Ouroboros' arms naked in her backyard. And it looks like Hannah's going to be next, because when Hannah's going through the house and she sees the photo album with all the pictures of the horses, because their dad had this thing for horses, all the horse heads have been cut out. And then you see Hannah open up the closet in the one bedroom she's in, and her hand kind of goes up. And you know that is supposed to indicate that Hannah is now being controlled by Ouroboros. So I imagine Hannah's kids in a considerable amount of trouble. But yeah, this movie was amazing, and that's where I'm going to leave it. So thank you so much for hanging out with me for almost 9 minutes while I discussed the 2011 film Lovely Molly. Like always, if you like this review, don't forget to go out and do something nice for somebody. But most importantly, please don't forget that the world is a hell of a lot more fun because you are in it. And don't forget that whatever you're going through, day by day, it's going to get better, and you're going to start feeling like your old self again. Have a good night.